No one expected her to sit at that piano, a janitor in worn-out sneakers, a name tag no one ever read. She wiped the keys clean, but no one imagined she could make them sing. Then, on the night everything fell apart, when every plan had failed, they put her on stage. As a joke, what happened next wasn't a mistake. It was unforgettable. Some of the most powerful music doesn't come from spotlight. It comes from silence. This is the story of Lena Carter, a woman the world overlooked until she made it impossible to ignore her. Don't look away, because the most beautiful music doesn't always echo from center stage. Sometimes it rises from the shadows. She walked into the elegant music hall with her head bowed, just another invisible worker in a faded uniform. No one noticed her, unless they needed someone to mock for their own amusement. So when they forced her to sit at the piano as a cruel joke, no one expected what came next. But by the time her fingers lifted from the keys, the woman they had ridiculed had become the woman they would never forget. But how had it come to that moment? The answer lay in a morning just like any other. Lena Carter moved quietly between the polished marble columns of the Preston Music Conservatory. The soft squeak of her worn sneakers echoed faintly against the pristine floors, a stark contrast to the refined strains of Chopin drifting from the practice rooms. At 28, she wore the beige custodial uniform with quiet grace, her dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her movements quick and practiced as she emptied bins and wiped down surfaces. After 3 years working there, she had become as invisible as the dust she cleared from antique picture frames. The students and professors passed her by without a glance, their eyes slipping past her as though she were part of the architecture. In the main hall, she paused to straighten a crooked portrait of a stern-faced composer. Her hands, roughened by years of cleaning chemicals, moved with an elegance that might have seemed out of place, if anyone had been looking. "Lena, can you take care of the reception area today? The foundation board is coming in," her supervisor called out, not glancing up from his clipboard. "Yes, Mr. Collins," she replied softly. She made her way to the grand reception room, where vaulted ceilings met soaring glass walls. There, in the corner, stood the magnificent Steinway, a gleaming centerpiece of countless recitals and fundraising galas. For just a moment, something flickered across Lena's face, a trace of longing, fragile and fleeting. In the polished brass of a nearby lamp, she caught her reflection. And for a heartbeat, she didn't see the janitor in a beige uniform. She saw the girl she used to be, 15 years younger, seated at a piano just like this one, her future unfolding before her like an unwritten symphony. But that was before life had intervened, before choices made from love, not ambition, had led her down another road. Lena shook her head gently and returned to her work. The past was the past. This was her life now, and she had made peace with it, or so she reminded herself every morning. The sharp sound of heels clicking against marble snapped her from her thoughts, the unmistakable rhythm of command. Marianne Blake swept through the reception area with the authority of someone accustomed to attention. At 53, she ran the Preston Conservatory with the same precision she had once brought to concert stages across Europe. Her tailored navy suit, silver bob perfectly styled, and diamond watch glinting beneath the lights, all part of an image she had curated meticulously. Success, refinement, and absolute control. These chairs need to be exactly 1 inch apart, not this haphazard arrangement, Marianne said, barely glancing at Lena as she passed. The Jefferson Foundation representatives expect perfection. "Yes, Mrs. Blake," Lena replied softly, immediately crossing the room to begin respacing the chairs with practiced precision. From a nearby hallway, Clara Moreau observed the exchange with a barely hidden smirk. The conservatory's star piano instructor, Clara had built her career on producing award-winning prodigies and maintaining a reputation for relentless standards. "Marianne," Clara called out, her voice carrying just far enough to reach Lena's ears. "Do remind the staff to use the service cork-writers once our guests arrive. Last time I noticed some of them wandering in plain sight during the Chopin competition." Lena's cheeks flushed, but her hands didn't falter. These little humiliations had become as routine as dusting the trophy cases. Later that afternoon, as Lena polished the brass handrail on the grand staircase, a familiar sound caught her attention. The stuttered rhythm of a student stumbling through a difficult piano passage. Through the partially open door of a practice room, she saw a young girl, maybe 12, her brow furrowed in frustration as she repeated the same measures, faltering again and again. Without thinking, Lena murmured under her breath, "Try relaxing your wrist a little, especially in the arpeggios." The girl looked up, startled. A second later, Clara appeared behind her. "Did you just attempt to instruct my student?" Clara's voice sliced through the air like a razor. "I'm sorry, Lena stammered. "You just what? Thought your expertise in mops and disinfectant qualified you to give piano advice?" Clara's laugh was sharp, cruel. "Please stick to what you know, cleaning supplies and trash bins." The door closed firmly in Lena's face. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Silently, she turned back to her polishing, her shoulders just slightly more hunched than before. What Clara didn't see, what no one ever saw, was the way Lena's fingers moved subtly along the railing as she worked. Invisible to the world, they danced through the exact passage the student had struggled with, correcting, refining, completing it in silence. A perfect performance, one that would never reach a single ear. And so the days passed unnoticed, until the night everything changed. The day of the annual fundraising gala arrived in a flurry of movement in whispered tension. Under Lena's careful hand, the conservatory gleamed, brass fixtures polished to a mirror shine, windows spotless, chairs aligned with near military precision. Soon the halls would echo with laughter, crystal clinking, and the shallow charm of those whose donations shaped futures of students and staff alike. The gala would decide everything, what programs would thrive and which would vanish without ceremony. Lena moved quietly through the reception hall, making final adjustments, when the double doors burst open with a loud metallic clang. Clara stormed in, phone pressed to her ear, her heels hitting the floor like gunshots. Her expression was tight with panic. "What do you mean you're in the hospital?" Her voice ricocheted across the marble. "The gala starts in an hour, Chloe. You can't possibly—" She paused, listening, her face paled, then darkened. "Food poisoning? Today of all days?" She ended the call with a swipe, just as Marianne Blake entered briskly behind her, pearls catching the chandelier light, her tone already urgent. "What's happened?" "Chloe can't perform," Clara said through clenched teeth. "She's in the ER." Marianne's hand flew to her chest. "But she's our featured performer. The Jefferson Foundation requested the Hungarian Rhapsody." "I know," Clara snapped, lowering her voice. "None of my other students are ready. That piece is unforgiving." At that moment, Daniel Reyes, one of the younger teaching assistants, stepped forward hesitantly. Unlike most, Daniel always greeted Lena with small kindnesses. A nod, a smile, a quiet "thank you" when others said nothing. "Mrs. Blake," he said gently, "if I might offer a suggestion." Marianne turned toward him like a drowning woman glimpsing a lifeline. "Yes, please." Daniel hesitated. "I've heard someone else play that piece. Brilliantly, actually." Clara blinked. "Professor Williams is in Vienna, unless you're suggesting one of the graduate students." "No," Daniel said, his voice calm but steady. His eyes drifted toward the woman dusting a glass display case nearby, seemingly oblivious to the storm unraveling just feet away. "I'm suggesting Lena." Silence fell, thick and stunned. Then Clara laughed, short, sharp, disbelieving. "The janitor? You can't be serious." "I've heard her play," Daniel said, unmoved. "After hours, when she thought no one was listening. She's remarkable." Marianne and Clara exchanged incredulous glances, then slowly turned toward Lena, who had frozen mid-motion. The duster hung suspended in her hand, a single particle of dust drifting through the light between them. Marianne stepped forward. "Is this true?" she asked, voice clipped. "You play piano?" Lena lowered the duster, a faint flush rising to her cheeks. "Yes, ma'am." "And you believe you could perform Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody?" Clara's tone dripped with disbelief. Lena paused. For a moment, the noise of the busy hall fell away. She could hear her heartbeat, feel the years pressing down on her shoulders, years spent in silence, in shadows. But then she looked up and for the first time in 3 years met Clara's gaze head-on. "Yes, ma'am, I can." Marianne narrowed her eyes, studying her as if seeing her, not the uniform, for the first time. "You honestly believe you can replace Chloe Langford tonight? At our gala?" Lena stood motionless, caught in the sudden spotlight of their scrutiny. Around them, staff bustled, chairs scraped, glasses clinked. But in this small pocket of space, time had narrowed to a single breath. Clara scoffed. Let me make sure I'm hearing this correctly. You think you can step in for Chloe Langford, a girl who's trained at Juilliard Aspen, Paris, since she was 5? Lena's voice was soft, steady, unshaken. I don't think I can. I know I can. Well, she took a breath, steadying herself, then added quietly, I know the piece. At that moment, a new voice cut into the tension. Harold Whitmore, chairman of the board, approached with his usual composed elegance. His brow lifted slightly at the charged atmosphere, sensing something more than just a scheduling mishap. What's going on? He asked, his tone polite, but sharp enough to demand real answers. Marianne gave a brittle laugh. Apparently, our custodian believes she can save the gala performance. Harold turned to Lena. His gaze moved slowly from her scuffed sneakers to her beige uniform, to the calm stillness in her face. His eyes narrowed, not unkindly, just calculating. Is that so? He asked. Lena nodded. Yes, sir. Her voice remained steady, though her heart pounded like timpani under her ribs. She felt their stares like spotlights. Marianne's cool and assessing, Clara's mocking, Harold's curious. And there she stood, the faint scent of polish clinging to her sleeves. Rough hands still marked by work. Hands that had been picking up crumpled programs only minutes before. Well, Harold said, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth, this is certainly unexpected. Clara leaned closer to Marianne and Harold, her voice low but just loud enough for Lena to hear, perhaps intentionally. It might actually work in our favor, she murmured. Frame it as community outreach. If she bombs, we spin it as a quirky moment. If she's even passable, we look charitable. Everyone wins. Marianne's eyes flickered, the thought taking root. The donors might find it endearing, she mused. A little heart before we explain Chloe's absence. Lena said nothing. She didn't need to. She had heard this kind of conversation before, spoken just loud enough for her to understand that she wasn't being addressed. She was being managed, presented, packaged, not a person, a prop. It's settled then, Marianne said briskly, turning to face her. You'll play tonight. One piece. Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody. Lena met her gaze without flinching. And if I refuse? The words surprised even herself, quiet but unwavering. Marianne's smile turned glassy. Then I suppose we'll have to reconsider your position here. Budget cuts, you understand. And there it was, laid bare. This wasn't just about music anymore. Not about the right to perform. It was about something deeper. Identity, dignity. The part of herself Lena had folded up and hidden beneath years of silence and compromise. This was a choice, stand up or disappear. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers. If Lena's quiet courage moved you, hit that button and help us grow a space where stories like this live and breathe. The grand hall glittered beneath cascading chandeliers. Laughter and conversation echoed off the marble as the conservatory's most generous patrons sipped champagne and settled into plush velvet chairs. Behind the curtain, Lena stood alone, still in her uniform, still wearing her name tag, Lena J., like a quiet badge of everything she was and wasn't, a mark not of shame, but of survival. On stage, Marianne stepped to the microphone, her voice bright and theatrical. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, we have a small change to this evening's program. Our scheduled performer, Chloe Langford, had an unfortunate emergency and won't be joining us tonight. A ripple of concern and curiosity moved through the room. But, Marianne continued, smile widening, in the spirit of our community outreach initiatives, we have a special performance prepared. One of our own staff members will take the stage tonight to remind us all that music knows no rank, no title, no resume. The words hung in the air like a polite insult. From the wings, Lena stepped forward. The spotlight hit her like a wave, too bright, too sharp, too exposing. A few scattered chuckles rose from the back rows. She caught sight of Clara near the curtain, arms crossed, that smirk playing at the corners of her lips, like a cat watching a mouse squirm. Lena took her seat at the Steinway, the same magnificent grand she had dusted so many times. Its polished surface reflected the nerves in her eyes. Her heart thudded, too fast, too loud. It had been 15 years. Lena sat at the magnificent grand piano, its polished surface catching the stage lights and reflecting the quiet storm in her eyes. Her fingers hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. For 15 years, she had played only in solitude, empty rooms, quiet nights. Her grandmother's battered upright piano tucked into a corner of a modest living room. Never like this, never with a crowd waiting, watching, ready to dismiss her, ready for a spectacle, not a performance. In the front row, Harold leaned toward his companion with a smirk, his voice carrying just enough to be heard. This should be entertaining, if nothing else. Lena closed her eyes, and in the darkness behind her lids, she wasn't in a concert hall. She was back in that small, warm living room, seated beside her grandmother, an old woman with arthritis-twisted fingers who had once played in symphony halls across Europe. Music isn't about who you are to the world, her grandmother had told her, guiding her hand gently across ivory keys. It's about who you are when the world falls away. Lena opened her eyes and began to play. The first notes of Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2 filled the air, not the hesitant fumbling they'd expected. No, these were bold, confident, commanding notes, each one delivered with the precision of a practiced hand and the passion of a soul that had waited too long to be heard. Her hands danced across the keys, telling a story that words had never been allowed to express. Years of silence, of ridicule, of invisibility, all poured into the music with elegant, aching clarity. The whispers stopped. The polite smirks froze. 200 guests fell into absolute stillness, breathless as the music unfolded. Through dazzling technical passages, Lena didn't falter. Her body swayed gently with the rhythm, her expression alive, transformed by the very notes pouring through her. The playful sections sparkled with mischief. The storming crescendos boomed like thunder across the vaulted ceiling, shaking the room with their power. In the third row, an elderly patron dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. At the back of the room, a well-known music critic leaned forward, his pen forgotten in his lap, his face filled with stunned reverence. On the wings, Marianne stood frozen, the color drained from her face. Clara gripped the stage curtain, her knuckles white. Daniel stood nearby, his gaze never leaving the stage, watching, quietly vindicated, as the truth revealed itself note by perfect note. Then came the final chord, bold, unflinching. Silence. 3 heartbeats passed. Stillness hung in the air like held breath. Then, applause. It began hesitantly, like no one dared break the spell. Then it grew, swelled, thundered into a roaring ovation. Cries of "Bravo!" echoed off marble and glass. Guests leapt to their feet, those same people who moments ago were prepared to endure a janitor's awkward attempt now stood with shining eyes, swept away by what they had witnessed. Lena remained seated for a moment, as if unsure whether she was truly there, truly seen. When she finally stood and offered a small, humble bow, the applause grew louder, fiercer, real. From the audience, Benjamin Hartley, an acclaimed conductor and honored guest, stood and began making his way toward the stage. Lena turned to leave, overwhelmed, hoping to slip away unnoticed. "Wait," he called, his voice cutting through the noise with unmistakable authority. "Young lady." She paused, turning back slowly. The spotlight still lit her in stark contrast, simple uniform, worn shoes, name tag catching the light. "Where did you study?" he asked, staring at her like she was something he hadn't seen in decades. Lena met his gaze, her voice soft but steady. "I didn't, sir. Not formally." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Benjamin stepped closer, eyes wide with disbelief. "That's impossible. Your technique, your expression, your interpretation." "My grandmother taught me," she said quietly. The silence that followed was sacred. Not disbelief, but awe. "Evelyn Carter," Lena said softly, her voice carrying somehow across the now silent hall. Recognition flickered in Benjamin Hartley's eyes. "Evelyn Carter? The Evelyn Carter who played with the National Symphony in the 70s? Lena nodded. "She raised me after my parents died. We couldn't afford conservatory tuition, but she taught me everything she knew." Marianne stepped forward, her professional polish snapping back into place. How fascinating. What a wonderful human interest story. It's not a story, Lena replied quietly. It's my life. The quiet dignity in her voice silenced Marianne more effectively than any sharp retort ever could have. Lena turned to Clara, her gaze unwavering. I was accepted to Juilliard 15 years ago. Shock rippled through the small circle. But my grandmother had a stroke the same week. I stayed to care for her. By the time she passed, there were medical bills. The opportunity was gone. Benjamin nodded slowly, everything clicking into place. So you took a white here to stay close to music? Yes, Lena said. A single word that carried the weight of years, of choices made from love, not ambition, of dreams deferred, not discarded, of staying tethered to what mattered, even when the path forward seemed closed. And in that moment, standing beneath the harsh glow of the spotlight, still dressed in her beige uniform, Lena Carter ceased to be just a custodian. To everyone watching, she became real, unmistakably human, and unforgettable. The reception hall buzzed with energy. Patrons who had never noticed her before now surrounded her, their eyes, once indifferent, now filled with wonder and admiration. Your interpretation of the middle section was extraordinary, said a silver-haired woman who had donated funds for the East Wing. So much emotional depth. Lena accepted the praise with quiet grace, neither shrinking from it nor basking in it. Across the room, Marianne Blake moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her smile tight as she fielded questions about the remarkable discovery. Of course, we recognize her potential, she told a major donor. Our community outreach programs are designed precisely to nurture hidden talents. By the refreshments, Clara Reed stood alone, her usual entourage now gathered around Lena. Her students, once devoted to her, looked at Lena with a kind of admiration that no title could manufacture. Daniel approached, offering Lena a glass of sparkling water. I told you they'd be amazed. Thank you, Lena replied, her smile soft, for speaking up. Not many people would have. Before Daniel could respond, Benjamin Hartley returned, this time with Sophia Nguyen, head of the Jefferson Foundation. Miss Carter, Sophia began, our foundation believes that talent should never be limited by circumstance. We've been looking for someone to lead a new initiative for underprivileged youth, someone who understands both musical excellence and the real-world barriers young people face. Lena blinked, absorbing the offer. The position would involve teaching and performing, Benjamin added, his voice gentler now. Your story and your music could inspire young musicians who've been told certain doors were never meant for them. Lena nodded slowly, overwhelmed, but steady. That single gesture held the weight of years, of choosing love over ambition, reality over dreams, and still finding her way back to the music that never left her. Across the room, Harold Whitmore watched it unfold, his expression unreadable. But something in the air had shifted permanently. What once felt fixed, titles, pedigrees, reputations, had been quietly rewritten by a woman in a beige uniform who refused to disappear. 3 months later, Lena walked the same marble corridors she had once polished by hand. Only now she carried sheet music, not cleaning supplies, purpose, not invisibility. There had been no fairy godmother moment, no sudden glittering transformation, just something far more lasting, a new beginning born from truth and quiet, relentless resilience. She still dressed simply, but the beige was gone. Her new role with the Jefferson Foundation's Music Within Reach program brought her into classrooms filled with faces like hers had once been, curious, cautious, overflowing with silent hope. As she passed the reception area, she exchanged a nod with Marianne, formal, polite. The kind reserved for two people who had, in their own ways, learned something about humility. Some lessons take time. Others take someone brave enough to show them. In Studio E, a group of teenagers waited, students from schools where music had been cut, where pianos existed only in imagination. Lena sat at the Steinway and looked into their uncertain eyes. My grandmother used to say, she began, that music isn't about who you are to the world. It's about who you are when the world falls away. Then she played, not to prove anything, not to earn applause, not to be forgiven or remembered. She played because it was the truest thing she knew, because music was not just what she did, it was who she was. And this time she wasn't playing alone. Her students leaned in, wide-eyed. And in their stillness, Lena finally understood. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to be exactly who you are, unapologetically in a world that only ever asked you to be less. Because real talent doesn't always arrive with credentials or fanfare. Sometimes it comes quietly, in worn shoes, with calloused hands, in a truth that refuses to be silenced. Sometimes it waits quietly in the shadows, in the hands that serve instead of command, in the hearts that have learned resilience through sacrifice. And when it's finally heard, it changes everything. How many Lenas walk among us unnoticed? How many gifts remain hidden because we're too quick to judge by appearances? Too comfortable in our assumptions about who belongs where? Have you ever been underestimated or judged unfairly? Or maybe you've witnessed someone reveal a hidden talent that completely changed the way you saw them. Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be the encouragement someone else needs to keep going. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us bring more powerful, life-affirming stories into the light. Because sometimes, the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places. Until next time, keep looking beyond the surface.